Welcome to the solution video for the generics challenge. Let's jump right in here and start up Visual Studio 2019. On the right, we'll come to Get Started, scroll down to Create a New Project, and we'll select the console app, and let's do it in the .NET framework, which I already have that as a recent project template, so let's just use that. And we'll call this the generics challenge, and we'll call it generics challenge app. Once this gets created, we'll add our console read line at the end and then start tackling the different parts. So console.readline. And now the first thing we want to do is tackle our main goal, which is to take two lists of t's, intermix them, and return a new list. So let's start off with just scaffolding out the method we need. So private static list of t, and let's call this merge lists of type t. Take in a list of t, and just call it list 1 is fine, and a list of t called list 2. And then what we're going to do is we're going to merge these two. So we'll have an output. So a list of t called output equals new list of t. So that gets us started. But now one of the parts of this is we need to take the bigger one first, the bigger list, and start with that and then say, okay, one from the big list, one from the small list, one from the big list, one from the small list, until the small list runs out, and then it's just let's get more from the big list until we're done. So let's first create a bigger and a smaller list. So a list of t, we'll call it bigger list. Now I could declare both of these in the same line, but I do like to have them separated out by a separate line so you don't miss one of the declarations. So a bigger list and a smaller list. And I have not initialized those. That's intentional. Now I'm going to say if list1.count is greater than list2.count. That means list 1 is the bigger list. Bigger list equals list 1. Smaller list equals list 2. So our else is going to say bigger list equals list 2 and smaller list equals list 1. Just kind of flip-flopping those. Now you may wonder, I'm creating a lot of lists here and it seems very inefficient. But the reality is the only list I'm actually creating is output. That's it. The rest of these are just holding the address to the instance. That's all we're doing. So there's very, very efficient when it comes to memory. This is not a memory intensive list copying thing. So we're not copying the list, we're just storing them in a different variable name. So in this case, list 1 is the same exact list as bigger list. Okay, so down here, let's create an integer that says smaller count, let's call it. And that's going to hold the smaller list count. That way, instead of going to the property every time, we can just grab this int instead. Do we have to do that? Probably not, but it's either a little bit of a shortcut and it may be a little bit of a speed savings. We'll see. Let's do a for loop, not a for each. And the reason why a for loop is because I want to have that counter so I can grab items from both lists. So let's say, well, it's less than bigger list dot count. So it's going to loop through every item in the bigger list. So we can say output dot add bigger list I. So what it's saying is add every single entry from the bigger list to our output. but we wanted to intersperse them with a smaller list. So down here we can say if I is less than smaller count, that means there's still a value in the smaller list that corresponds to this I. If that's true, then output.add smaller list I. So you won't go beyond our bounds here because we're checking the bounds just like we would in our for loop. Like right here, we're doing the same exact thing, only every time. So you can check to see if we've reached the upper tier of our smaller list. Once we're done, return output. And that is our merged list. So let's verify this works. Let's create a list of string, let's say. List of string, we'll call it, let's just keep the same name, list1 equals new list of string. I'm going to do my curly braces here instead of my open and close paren, so I can just say item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, and finally item 5. And 3, 3, and then 4, 5, because there is no corresponding 4 and 5. Also notice that the larger of the two lists started off. Just to verify this works, let's flip the order we send them in. So 2 and 1. We run it again, and we get the exact same results. Because it doesn't matter which way we send it in, it's still going to order it in the correct way. So that's all we need to resolve this, the main goal of the challenge. Now we can comment this out, and I can work on the next part of our goal, which is that we want to create a generic method that takes two generic objects. So private static, it returns one of the objects. Let's just say void for now. And let's call it determine longer title. And it's going to take two different generic objects in. So we're going to have a T item 1 and a U item 2. But here's a question. How do we return one of these types? It may be T, it may be U, and they're different types. And then how do we notice in here, if I say T dot, I don't get a title as an option. Well, the reason why is because we have not limited this to only certain items. Let's come down here below this curly brace on line 74 and create a public interface. Let's call this the I have title. That sounds good. The I have title has one entry in it, and it's just a property. So I usually do prop anyways, even though the public has to be taken off. Call it title. And there we go. So that is our public interface I have title. And now we'll create a couple of classes. We'll move these over into their own file in just a minute. But let's just create them right here. So public class, let's call it person that inherits from or implements, I have title. Make sure it implements the interface. So there we go, it's got a title. And let's just say it has a name as well. And then we'll have another public class called address that also implements I have title. Control dot to implement the interface. And we'll say that it has also a city. Okay, so really simple stuff here. We have a person, we have an address, we have an interface that makes the two have a commonality. So for each of these, let's create their own file. Move type to file. Control dot. Move type to person.cs. And control dot to move type to address.cs. There we go. And now what we'll do is we're going to use that interface to limit our T and U. We're going to say where T is an I have title. And let's put it right underneath. So let's try to line this up as best as possible. And say where U is also I have title. So it's now limited both the T and the U to be something that implements the I have title interface. Now inside here we can say T dot, and one of the items is title. Okay, now how to return either T or U? Well, we know that both of them implement I have title. Therefore, we can return an I have title entry. Okay, so now we can say if, and there's a couple ways you can go about this if you want to have one return or two. So you can say if item1 dot title dot length is greater than item2 dot title dot length, then return item1. Else, return item2. So the longer title gets returned. And that's all there is to it. So now we can test this out by creating first a person, let's just call him person, equals new person. Let's add a title and a name and a title. So title equals Timothy, and the name equals Tim Corey. What we put in the title doesn't really matter. It's just we have something. Then we have an address. Let's call address equals new address, curly braces. Title equals Scranton, and city equals, that's Scott Township. Okay, so again, doesn't really matter what we put in there. We're just trying to identify which one's longer. Now this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Scranton is longer. So what we should see is that Scranton comes out on top, So we'll say var result, var longer result equals determine longer title, pass in person and address. And then we'll just print out the longer result dot title. That's all we care about. If we run this, Scranton is the result. Now, what if I just said SCR? Well, in that case, Timothy is the result. Okay? So, depending on which one is longer, that's what gets returned. So as far as code goes, there isn't much to the bonus challenge, and yet you have to know a few things. First of all, you have to know how to constrain your T and your U. Because if you didn't constrain these, you couldn't return an I have title, because you wouldn't know they're always I have title. You also couldn't have access to the title property. So that's really important, okay? So, and then it's just a matter of knowing that since both of these are I have title, you can return I have title values. So therefore you can return either one, even though they're different types, or could be. You could have two persons or two addresses or something else entirely, as long as it implements I have title. So that's it for the solution to the generics challenge. I hope that you follow along, you kind of understood what I did, and I hope that this kind of grows your skills and ability in the generics area. Now, if something was new to you here, make sure you practice it a few more times. Just kind of get the feel of it and kind of understand what it can and can't do. Maybe change up how you limit these things and just try out different constraints. And that's the key word to look up. So you look up C# generic constraints, and you will find the different constraints you can apply to an object. Okay? Thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.